It's October. You're somewhere in rural America, or maybe England, Canada, or Australia. And you're standing at the entrance of a corn maze. There's a map in your hand that you will absolutely misread. There are children somewhere behind you who are already arguing. There's a teenager dressed as a scarecrow, earning $10 an hour, who is actively judging your life choices. And as you walk in, the stalks close around you. You probably think, this is a fun seasonal thing. This is just something farms do in autumn. But it hasn't always been like that. The corn maze, that specific, peculiar American institution, has a history that stretches back centuries, touches on philosophy, landscape, architecture, religion, and one very determined man in Pennsylvania who changed everything in 1993. This is the history of the corn maze, and it goes way deeper than you think. Let's start at the beginning. Not with corn comes later, but with the maze itself. Because before anyone ever cut a path through a cornfield, humans had been obsessed with mazes for at least 4,000 years. The oldest known labyrinth design appears in carvings found across the ancient Mediterranean and Near East. A single path, spiraling design archaeologists call the classical labyrinth. And crucially, this is not actually a maze in the modern sense. There are no dead ends, no wrong turns. You simply follow the winding path and eventually reach the center. It's a walking meditation, not necessarily a puzzle. This design shows up almost everywhere with almost no cross-cultural contact to explain it. The Hopi people of the American Southwest used it. Bronze Age carvings in Sardinia depict it. Rocky Valley in Cornwall, England has two of them carved into stone, dated to around 1800 BC. Nobody knows exactly how or why the same design appeared independently across the world, but theories range from it representing the path of the soul after death, to symbolizing the journey through seasons, to, and this is the most intriguing, a universal human tendency to draw spirals when we're thinking about complexity. Then comes the most famous labyrinth of all, the one at Knossos, on the island of Crete. You know the story: King Minos, the Minotaur, Theseus, Ariadne, and her thread. Greek mythology gave us the word labyrinth itself, and the terrifying idea of a maze you might not escape. Whether a literal structure existed at Knossos is still debated by archaeologists. The palace complex there is genuinely elaborate and confusing, but the myths cemented something important in the human imagination. The maze is a place of danger, of trial, of confrontation with something monstrous at the center. For the next 2,000 years, that duality, the maze is meditation versus maze is trap, would shape everything that came after. Fast forward to medieval Europe. The labyrinth has been thoroughly absorbed into Christian symbolism. You'll find labyrinth patterns inlaid in floors of cathedrals across France. Chartres has perhaps the most famous, a complex circular pattern that pilgrims would walk on their knees as a form of devotion. Walking the labyrinth became a substitute pilgrimage for those who couldn't make the journey to Jerusalem. Same symbolic journey, same spiritual arrival, just in northern France instead of the Holy Land. But it was in the Renaissance that the maze became something new, a garden feature, a status symbol, a statement about wealth, sophistication, and the ability to command nature. The first recorded hedge maze in England dates to around 1690 at Hampton Court Palace. And that maze, remarkably, still exists. You can walk it today. It's made of yew and hornbeam and covers about a third of an acre. And every year, roughly 300,000 people get mildly lost in it. It was designed for King William III, and at the time, it represented the absolute cutting edge, or should I say cutting hedge, of landscape design. A good maze meant that you had the land, labor, and expertise to pull it off. Only the aristocracy could afford them. Through the 18th and 19th century, hedge mazes spread across the English countryside and European royal gardens. They became places of leisure, of intrigue, of courtship. There's an entire literary tradition of people getting lost in garden mazes and falling in love, or getting lost in garden mazes and overhearing secrets, or getting lost in mazes and having a quiet crisis about the nature of existence, which, to be fair, remains the primary emotional experience of maze going to this day. But here's the thing about hedge mazes. They're expensive. They take years to grow. They require constant trimming, and crucially, you can't just plant for one season. The hedge maize is a permanent, generational commitment to a specific piece of land. What the world needed, though it didn't know it yet, was a maize you could grow in 3 months and replant every year. It needed corn. Maize, what Americans call corn, was domesticated from a wild grass called teosinte in southern Mexico approximately 9,000 years ago. This is one of the most consequential acts of agriculture in human history. Through selective cultivation over generations, indigenous peoples transformed a scrubby, nearly inedible grass to the most productive cereal crop on Earth. By the time European colonizers arrived in North America, corn was the agricultural backbone of hundreds of indigenous nations. It traveled with colonists back to Europe, adapted to new climates, and eventually became central to American identity in a way that goes beyond food. Corn is the fuel in our cars, the sugar in our sodas, the feed that raises most of the meat that we eat. The United States grows roughly a third of the world's corn, with Iowa alone producing more corn than most countries. But for our story, what matters is this. Corn grows tall, 6 to 10 feet in a good season, and very quickly, in very dense rows. And it does this predictably, year after year, across enormous, flat fields. If you wanted to design a crop that was perfect for making a temporary maize, you could barely improve upon maize. Someone eventually was going to figure that out. Fast forward to the year 1993. The location is Annville, Pennsylvania, and the man who's about to change the autumn farm economy forever is named Don France. France was working in agricultural tourism, a field that barely existed at this point, and was looking for ways to help struggling farms find new revenue streams. Family farms across America were under enormous economic pressure. Commodity prices were volatile, land values were rising, and the romantic idea of the small family farm was colliding with the hard economic reality. Farms needed to diversify. They needed to attract visitors. They needed, essentially, to become experiences as much as producers of produce. France's idea was elegant in its simplicity. Cut a maize into a cornfield, charge admission, run it for a few weeks in the fall. The corn grows back next year. You design a new maize and you have a new attraction. The first official corn maze opened at Lebanon Valley College in Annville in 1993. It was roughly 3 acres, cut in a simple pattern, and it was an immediate hit. People drove from neighboring counties. Local news covered it. Word spread. Now, on a small historical note here, there is some debate about the precise first corn maze. Some accounts point to other early experiments in corn maze design around the same period. Notably, there was one noted being in LA around 1989. But it was not a recurring maze and seems to kind of have been just a triviality. On the other hand, what France and his collaborators did wasn't just cut one maze. They began consulting with other farms. They refined the design process, and they designed a template which could spread. And spread it did. Within a few years, there were corn mazes across Pennsylvania, then across the Northeast, then across the country. By the late 1990s, the corn maze had become a genuine American cultural institution, something families expected to do in October, the same way they expected to carve pumpkins. Here's where it gets genuinely fascinating. Because cutting a corn maze is not as simple as walking into a field with a lawnmower and improvising. The earliest mazes were designed on paper and translated to the field through careful measurement and staking, a process that was laborious and prone to error. Getting proportions right when you're standing inside 12-foot stalks and can't see more than a few feet in any direction is genuinely difficult. Early designers would climb ladders, use grid systems, and sometimes just accept that the maze would be slightly different from the design. GPS changed everything. By the late 1990s and into the 2000s, corn maze designers began using GPS-guided equipment to mark paths with extraordinary precision. Today, professional maze designers, and yes, that is an actual career, work with GPS data accurate to within a few centimeters. They design the maze digitally, often as a detailed graphic, and then the GPS system guides equipment through the field, marking exactly where the corn should be cut. The result is that modern corn mazes can be almost impossibly detailed. Some are cut in the shape of portraits, Abe Lincoln, a local sports hero, corporate logo. Some maps recreate the United States accurately enough to be instructive. Other maps are in the shape of an enormous QR code. A maze in Dixon, California regularly holds the record for the world's largest, covering over 100 acres with miles of paths. The Guinness World Record for largest corn maze stands at well over 100 acres. The design itself is a whole discipline. Good maze designers think carefully about the difficulty curve. You want early stage confusion that feels fun, not frustrating. You want decision points that feel meaningful. You want the satisfaction of finding a landmark. And you absolutely want multiple dead ends that send people back through sections they've already traveled. Because time in the maze is a product. Every additional minute of navigation is part of what the visitor paid for. Some mazes even include interactive elements. Questions at decision points, stamps to collect, clues to decode. These gamification layers aren't fun. They dramatically increase time on site and perceived value. A maze you navigate by logic feels more memorable than one you navigate by luck. In terms of money, the economic story of the corn maze is genuinely remarkable. In the early 1990s, the average American family farm was under severe financial stress. Decades of industry consolidations had pushed smaller operations towards the margins. A farm that once made a living growing soybeans and corn for commodity markets was increasingly finding those margins razor thin. Agritourism, the practice of opening farms to visitors as a revenue-generating experience, was one answer to this problem, and corn mazes became one of its killer applications. A farm that charges $10 per person, draws 1,000 visitors over a weekend, and runs for 8 weekends in the fall, has just earned $80,000 from a field that, grown for commodity corn, might have earned a fraction of that. But the maze without an I, is rarely the only revenue. Modern corn maze operations typically also sell pumpkins, offer hay rides, run petting zoos, sell cider and hot dogs and caramel apples and other snacks. The maze is a draw, the thing that gets families in the car, and the surrounding experience is where the real margin lives. This bundled agritourism model has become a genuine lifeline for family farms all across North America. The National Agricultural Statistics Service has tracked the growth of agritourism in the Census of Agriculture. Between 2002 and 2017, farm income from agritourism and recreational activities roughly tripled in the United States, reaching $950 million annually. Corn mazes are among the single most popular agritourism activities, appearing in almost every region of the country. And the farms that do it well don't just survive, they thrive. There are operations in the Midwest that began as struggling commodity farms in the 1990s and now generate more revenue from their October corn maze weekends than from their entire annual crop sale. When the model works, it is nothing short of transformative. At its origin, the corn maze is a deeply American invention, but it didn't stay American for long. The UK embraced the concept with particular enthusiasm, which makes sense given the British love for hedge mazes and the country's strong culture of rural tourism. British farms began cutting corn mazes in the late 1990s, and today the UK has hundreds of them. The Great British Maze Festival has become an annual celebration of the form. Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, and the rural home counties are particularly dense with them in autumn. Canada, Australia, and New Zealand followed suit. Then mainland Europe, where the corn maze concept merged with local agricultural traditions in interesting ways. In the Netherlands, where precision agriculture is practically a cultural value, corn maze designs have achieved extraordinary levels of geometric complexity. In Germany, mazes have been integrated into agricultural education programs. In Japan, rice paddy art, using rice paddies instead of corn, have become a distinct and beautiful art form, with designs visible from above that are genuinely stunning. In Inakadate, a village in Aomori Prefecture, farmers began creating large-scale images in their rice paddies in 1993. The same year as the first Pennsylvania corn maze, though the traditions developed independently. By planting different varieties of rice with different colored leaves, they managed to create images which were visible from elevated viewpoints. These have grown from simple designs to elaborate multi-acre artworks depicting everything from traditional Japanese imagery to scenes from pop culture. They attract hundreds of thousands of tourists annually and have become central to the village's identity and economy. The corn maze and rice paddy art share a root impulse: the recognition that agricultural land can be legible, can be beautiful, and can be an experience and not just a product. Beyond economics and agronomy, the corn maze has also become a genuine piece of American cultural furniture. It shows up in film and television with such regularity that it's essentially shorthand for rural autumn setting. Horror movies love them. There's something primarily unsettling about tall crops you can't see through, a path that might not lead anywhere, the sound of something moving parallel to you in the next row. Children of the Corn got there early, and every Halloween season, some creative director rediscovers the corn maze as a setting. But it's also become a family comedy staple. The harried parents, the overconfident dad who refuses to consult the map, the kids who've somehow navigated to the exit while the adults are still arguing about which way is north. There's a reason this scenario is universally legible. Corn mazes produce consistent, repeatable family experiences that include mild stress, mild triumph, and mild argument. They are, in the best possible way, a reliable generator of family memories. Social media has been a boon for the corn maze industry. Aerial drone photography has transformed the way mazes are marketed. A well-designed maze photographed from above is genuinely beautiful, and those images spread on Instagram and Pinterest and agricultural media in ways that simple ground-level photography never could. Maze designers have responded by creating designs that are increasingly graphic and dramatic, precisely because they know the aerial view is now the marketing image. There's also a competitive ecosystem that has developed. Maze design competitions, records for largest and most complex, industry conferences where designers share techniques. The fact that the Corn Maze Professional Association exists should speak volumes. People have careers, businesses, and reputations built around this thing that didn't exist as a commercial product before 1993. So why do mazes work on us? Why, across 4,000 years of human civilization, have we kept building them and kept walking? Neuroscience has some interesting things to say about this. Navigation activates some of the most ancient and deeply integrated parts of the human brain. The hippocampus, the brain structure central to memory formation, is also heavily involved in spatial navigation. When we navigate, we're engaging systems that evolved before language, before abstract reasoning, before most of what we think of as modern cognition. The challenge of a maze specifically triggers what psychologists call the exploration-exploitation trade-off. At every junction, you decide whether to explore the unknown path or return to known territory. This is a fundamental cognitive dynamic that shows up in everything from foraging behavior to career decisions to financial investing. Mazes let us exercise this capacity in a low-stakes, bounded environment. We feel the real sensation of uncertainty and decision-making without any real consequences. There's also something to the temporal experience of a maze. Inside a corn maze, your sense of time changes. The external world, your phone, your schedule, the 100 small anxieties of daily life, recedes. You are present in a way that modern life rarely demands. Many maze visitors report this as one of the most enjoyable aspects of the experience, often without being able to articulate why. They just feel focused, present, slightly competitive with their own family members, but in a good way. This is, at its root, the same experience that medieval pilgrims sought when walking the labyrinth at Chartres. The Hedge maze designers who built Hampton Court were tapping into it as well. Don France, cutting paths through a Pennsylvania cornfield in 1993, found it again, by accident or intuition or both. The maze is one of those rare human inventions that seems to satisfy something ancient and persistent in us. We keep coming back to it. We keep building it. We keep walking into it, even when we have a map that we will definitely misread. We started this video standing at the entrance of a corn maze. Let's go somewhere else to end it. Imagine you're in a drone rising above the same field. From the ground, the maze was just walls of corn and the width of a path. From 30 feet up, suddenly you can see it. The whole design, the loops and dead ends and the single correct route threading through and through. What felt like chaos had structure. What felt infinite was, from above, quite small and legible. There's a reason this image keeps appearing in writing about mazes. It's almost irresistibly metaphorical. Our problems look different from distance. Our conclusions have structure we can't see while we're inside them. History, examined closely, is bewildering. Examined from enough distance, it has shape. The corn maze went from ancient stone carvings to cathedral floors to royal gardens to a Pennsylvania farm to a global agritourism industry to a subject of neuroscience research. And it did this because it kept satisfying something real in us. The desire to be lost in a way that still feels safe. The pleasure of navigation. The particular satisfaction of finding the exit. Blinking in the open air, looking back at the field that held you, which you should absolutely do the next time you're in one. Turn around, look back. The maze is still there, indifferent, already waiting for the next family who will misread the map and argue about which direction to go, and eventually, and probably, find their way out. On a final note, this script was courtesy of my friend CM. Thank you to CM for the script.